This is the beginning of a passion project of mine, that is to create a masterclass for weapons that I think are either meta or have a strong potential to be meta, breaking them down into striking detail and showing you how to use them as efficiently and potently as possible. I really wanted to showcase these weapons because players have simply gotten used to their predecessors, such as the specific weapons that currently dominate the meta. Even if these weapons are extremely powerful, the player can only utilize its full potential when the behavior and the mechanics of the weapon is completely understood, because without that knowledge, your effectiveness with it will be cut in half, making you experience all the few downsides the weapon has to offer, rather than all the benefits. So in this video, I'm going to be starting with the FAMAS. One of 3 new weapons introduced in Season 2, this burst assault rifle is deadly in both mid to far ranges, and is incredibly accurate when it comes to hip firing at close ranges. However, even with the nerf to the FCAR, this assault rifle still has not managed to gain a foothold in the meta, and this, I believe, is not because of the damage it has to offer, or because it doesn't have a headshot multiplier. It is simply because players do not want to stray away too far from what they're used to. This is partially why games like Apex introduce a new weapon extremely broken, the Nemesis for example, because that is the only way you're going to get players to actually invest time into learning that particular weapon, being that the benefits are obtained right off the rip, rather than needing to spend the time to learn the weapon itself. However, the Finals has taken a different approach, which I do respect, by buffing the weapon and tuning it little by little until it's where it needs to be. However, doing it this way will prove to be an uphill battle, because trying to convince someone that is already so used to the FCAR's ease of use and recoil to switch to a whole new weapon, which on paper has a lower DPS, and on release an inconsistent recoil pattern, makes it very underwhelming when compared to the FCAR. But today, I'm going to give MnK a hand, and show you guys how potent this weapon is, why it is so powerful, and how to maximize its effectiveness on a consistent basis, with both MnK as well as Controller. So without further ado, if this video helps you out in some way, shape, or form, please smash that like button. It's a small button for you, but means the world to me. Also, subscribe for all things The Finals. As usual, I've left timestamps down below, so let's cut the bullshit and jump straight into it. Now, the key word I want you to remember during the entirety of this video is consistency. A weapon with this attribute can be just as effective as a weapon that has high DPS, but is extremely hard to control. A great example for this would be the XP54 and LH1, where the XP provides manageable recoil and consistency, and the LH1 provides a high DPS with a very short time to kill, with the only trade-off is having to deal with its insane recoil. Sometimes a faster time to kill does not necessarily correlate with the potency of a weapon. Having moderate damage and consistency in effective ranges can be just as effective as a weapon with a very high damage output. Now, the FCAR had the best of both worlds prior to its range and recoil nerf, making it very hard now to hit shots at farther distances, losing the dominance it once had in the meta. I'm not saying the weapon is completely useless, because that is absolutely far from the truth. It is still one of the best weapons in the game. I am simply stating that it lost the level of potency it once had, which as a side effect slightly cracks open the door of opportunities for other weapons to shine as well, such as the FAMAS. With the ability to now consistently land shots at very far ranges and a larger margin of error, it allows this weapon to go head to head against the FCAR and AKM when hip firing, and even with mid-range engagements, essentially giving it the range that the FCAR once had and the forgiveness that the AKM provides. But why is it rarely used in the arena? And to answer that, I'm going to bring you back to the beta of the Finals, to the time when the AKM had a manageable recoil and the FCAR was at full strength with more bullets in the mag. During the beta, it was rare to see a player using the FCAR over the AKM, because since the AKM is the first weapon a player would get, most players had already gotten used to the behavior and the mechanic of the AKM because of its ease of use. The FCAR didn't give a compelling enough reason to make an investment to learn an entirely different weapon, which had a little bit more range and slightly better recoil, but just had a smaller mag. Because why try to change something that's already working? It is in my opinion, so please don't crucify me for this, that the FAMAS is going through the exact same situation with the FCAR. It's part of the reason why I suspect MnK is also changing the recoil pattern when tuning weapons, rather than just adjusting damage falloff and values, thus causing the player to reinvest time in order to master or be proficient with the weapon's new behavior, in the hopes that the player will choose a new weapon since they were going to have to learn a different recoil pattern anyways. But unfortunately for MnK, this isn't working like it did for the AKM and the FCAR, because the recoil adjustment wasn't as severe as the adjustment the Lewis gun had, essentially driving some players that didn't want to get used to the new recoil pattern to try out the M60. FCAR players needed a more impactful reason that provided immediate results with very little effort, and that is definitely not the case with the FAMAS, which has a higher skill curve than the FCAR, but when learned can be just as lethal at all ranges and provide a level of accuracy and bullet forgiveness that in my opinion is only rivaled by the XP54. So to first unlock this potential, we need to understand how this gun behaves, and then use this understanding to train it at all ranges, in order to maximize the damage output of the FAMAS. So here's a little weapon overview before we get started. This gun has 27 bullets in the mag, giving you a total of 9 bursts per mag, needing 3 to 4 bursts to eliminate both light and medium classes, and 4 to 6 bursts to eliminate a heavy. This will give you an opportunity to down 2 lights, 1 light and 1 medium, 1 light and 1 heavy, or even, if the stars align and give you the perfect scenario, 1 medium and a heavy in just 1 mag. Now that we understand its potential, let's start the routine. I'll have different variations of some scenarios for each input, as well as have an indicator in the top right hand corner of the screen showing which scenario belongs to which input. Now, I'm not going to go over the specifics of recoil because first of all, it's damn near horizontal, and secondly, when in a live engagement, you're not going to be thinking about every burst and what direction it slightly strays to, being that the majority of your focus is going to be placed on your target and their movements. So for this weapon, along with most other weapons in the game, I want you to focus on slightly pulling down, and then utilizing counter-strafing, aka recoil smoothing, to compensate for the rest. We're going to start with close range engagements. At this range, I highly recommend that you rely strictly on hip firing. Try not to sprint while firing your weapon because you can definitely sprint while strafing, which can severely hurt your accuracy by spreading the bursts of your bullets too far apart, making you do 1 to 2/3 of damage you would have done. If you have auto sprint on, I suggest that you have a 0.4 delay on it so that you can at least hit the first 2 bursts before the sprint kicks in. To further negate this, you can even switch directions when the sprint activates to reset the timer. This is pretty much the same at close ranges for both inputs. You're going to be strafing and crouching to be as elusive as possible while using dynamic aim to maintain centering on the target. You can practice this with a warm-up I have on my Aim Training Guide 2.0 video that I have linked up here in the corner by finding a target, getting into close range, and move around the target while in hip fire, maintaining centering at all costs. Do this for 5 minutes. I highly recommend that you make your center dot as small as possible and lower its opacity to barely visible so that you can get used to aiming and centering the target rather than relying on the reticle. This is what we call model aiming, and you're going to be using it quite frequently in this routine, because in the finals, as long as the target is in the center of your screen, even if your reticle isn't, you'll hit your shots. Obviously, this won't work for projectile weapons, but for every other weapon in the game besides melee, this holds true. As for this warm-up, it'll be done the same way on controller as well as MnK. For the next scenario, we have mid-range engagements, and this is where the inputs start to differ, because depending on which one you use will dictate how you will strafe and how much freedom of movement you have, in order to pump out consistent DPS on the target. But there is one thing I want you to keep in mind regardless of which one you use, and that is to really focus, again, on model aiming. Like I stated before, you want to be focusing on the target rather than the reticle while aiming down sights, being that the FAMAS, just like the LH1, while an ADS, has one of the most obnoxious iron sights in the game, and is more distracting rather than helpful. So this type of aiming will help you look past the iron sights and allow you to focus on what is important, aka the target. Now let's start with MnK. I've come to find that strafing in one direction and firing your burst is the most optimal way to land the majority of your shots. This will keep each burst compact, allowing almost all the bullets to hit accurately. If you strafe left to right at a very fast pace, it will cause each burst to lose its compact form, making it seem like this weapon is doing very little damage because of the increased bullet dispersion. So if you do want to strafe back and forth, make sure to switch direction after firing the burst rather than while firing the burst, and make sure each strafe is around 2 seconds long. To practice this, we are going to go to the firing range and one clip the closest moving target 10 times while counter strafing in one direction, and 5 times while strafing back and forth, and only firing after changing strafe directions. Now, if you don't one clip the target, reload, refresh the target's health, and start again. We are going to now proceed to do the same thing on the farthest moving target. Again, one clip the target 10 times while counter strafing in one direction, and next 5 times while standing completely still, focusing on controlling the recoil by slightly pulling down and keeping each burst as condensed as possible. This will help you get used to the shot rhythm needed for consistent DPS at far ranges. We're going to switch to controller where things are a little different, because oddly, even if you strafe mid-burst, your shots will still manage to land most of the time, and you will not be punished as harshly as MnK for making abrupt movements in between a burst, giving you a little bit more freedom to move more spontaneously and incorporate other movements such as crouching that will throw off your opponent's aim and increase their time to kill. I don't know what it is about roller and this weapon specifically, and I'm not just talking about aim assist, because even when it's not activated by counter strafing, your burst will still land the majority of the time. It is almost as if the target's hitbox is increased, allowing the burst with a lot of dispersion between each bullet to still land. I'm not overhyping it, but this gun absolutely shreds on the sticks. I found it way easier to use than the current FCAR, and just as forgiving as the AKM. I just can't stress it to you guys enough. It is crazy how powerful this is on controller. Anyhow, to practice those mid-range engagements on roller, we're going to first get on heavy and use C C4 to explode and get rid of the barriers, then swap back to medium and proceed to counter-strafe, allowing the target to dictate our strafe direction so that we can activate rotational aim assist. On top of that, I also want you to incorporate 1-second crouches while firing at the target. With the amount of consistency and bullet magnetism that Controller has to offer, you have the luxury of crouching while having very little impact on bullet dispersion. So first, acquire your target, center it while in hip fire before going into ADS, this is to fully utilize the aim snap mechanic, and then counter-strafe to allow rotational aim assist to kick in. One clip and eliminate the closest moving target 15 times. Then move on to the farthest moving target without crouching this time though, and one clip it 10 times. Remember to only fire when the target is centered and rotational aim assist has activated. Then what you're going to do next is one clip the target while standing completely still to help you get used to the burst pace that is needed to land all your shots at far ranges, just like we did on the MnK variation. Now lastly, we're going to practice one more scenario, and that is downward angle tracking. I want you to make your way up here and aim for these two moving targets. I want you to find a decent head glitch and stand still while firing and shooting with the pace that provides you with the highest DPS and consistency. What this will do is not only form a good habit of utilizing height and head glitches to gain the most advantage, but also train an aspect of aiming that is often overlooked. I want you to remember to keep each burst as condensed as possible by slightly holding down, and one clip each target 5 times before wrapping up the routine. And that's about it, guys. If you utilize these scenarios before jumping into the arena on a consistent basis, I'd say an honest estimate would be 5 to 10 days, your effectiveness with the FAMAS will increase exponentially, and at the very least make this weapon a top contender pick for the meta along with the FCAR. I really hope you guys found this video informative. I also have a masterclass video coming up for the LH1, along with the sniper, and an aim training guide specifically for you controller players out there. Let me know in the comments if there are any other weapons you want to see, and which one of the videos I just stated that you want to see the most. If you don't want to miss any of them, hit that notification button and subscribe for all things the finals. Also, if this video helps you out in some way, shape, or form, please smash that like button. It's a small button for you, but makes a tremendous impact on my channel. Thank you guys so much for your support, and I'll see you next time. Peace and love.